There's a reason why most buildings in the world are built the way they are, and that's because of a little thing called gravity. It might seem like fun for architects to dream up excessive qualities for the aesthetics of fancy buildings, but they don't actually get built most of the time, because there's a high chance they'll fall down. But sometimes these buildings exceed everyone's expectations and have somehow survived their precarious roots. These structures shouldn't be standing, but they somehow still are. Make sure to stick around until the end to hear about the floating farmhouse in Ukraine that's seemingly balancing on one leg. Before we shock you with some of these precariously balanced buildings, make sure to like this video, subscribe to The Richest, and join our notification squad. Now let's get into 10 structures that defy the laws of gravity. The floating barn. Based in southeast England, this floating barn looks like it could collapse if too many people stood at the wrong end of it. The house was designed by the Dutch firm MVRDV, which has won a worldwide reputation for the ingenuity, playfulness, and comfort of their designs. This barn overlooks a small lake and is surrounded by picturesque views. From the road, the uniqueness of the barn is almost indiscernible, thanks to a pitched roof that faces the long driveway, suggesting a property that has a small and traditional shape. But when you get closer, you begin to realize something very strange. Half of the property extends out over a dropped portion of land, and the only thing supporting it is a single beam, if it could even be called that. In fact, 50% of this barn hangs over the drop, safely balancing itself thanks to some very careful architectural work. The entire property is almost 100 feet long and consists of 4 bedrooms, each with a separate bathroom. There's also a huge living room, full-size sliding windows, roof lights, and a glass floor to fully maximize the view underneath. Timmelsjoch Experience Past Museum. This huge slab of concrete in Italy looks more like something that was accidentally dropped by a crane rather than an actual building. The Timmelsjoch Experience Past Museum might look precariously balanced, but it's actually perfectly safe to enter the property without worrying about falling to the ground. Located along a mountain pass, the Timmelsjoch Experience Past Museum was constructed to celebrate the road's 50th anniversary. Glass covers the internal walls of the building, and it is faceted to resemble the inside of an icy cave. Situated at an elevation of 8,231 feet, the new construction at the summit of the Timmelsjoch offers visitors quite an impressive sight. The museum, the foundations of which are on the North Tyrolean side, but which protrudes 53 feet into South Tyrol, is housed in an erratic boulder. And that might sound like something you'd prefer to admire from a distance, but we promise that it's safe to take a trip inside. And with incredible views spanning from every corner of this museum, it's well worth a trip. Flying mudboat. Everything about the flying mudboat in Japan makes it look like it could fall apart at any moment. We'd be worried that as soon as we climbed into it, we'd potentially fall through the mud floor. But believe it or not, this structure is one to defy gravity that exists perfectly, even through the hardiest of storms. It was designed by famed Japanese architect Terunobu Fujimori, who is widely known for his peculiar designs. His designs usually have a surreal animated movie feel, with oddly organized spaces and rickety-looking structures, looking like they'd be right at home in an old Tim Burton film. And this flying mudboat is no exception. Simply put, it's an acorn-like mass blown up to human scale. It is suspended on tension cables over 4 natural wooden posts that have been anchored into the ground, and it's only accessible by ladder. The concept in itself is quite dynamic, and it is somehow capable of being installed in any environment or climate. Terunobu is known to use organic raw materials in his buildings, as they offer excellent thermal properties, a natural visual aesthetic, and are oftentimes sustainably acquired and applied. So at least this building is good for the environment. Too High Treehouse. The Japanese certainly have a penchant for out-of-this-world treetop architecture, and the incredible Tagasuki-an Tea House is no exception. It's another building to have been designed by architect Terunobu Fujimori. This tree-bound tea house stands precariously perched upon the trunks of 2 timbers erected on a plot of family land in Shino, Nagano Prefecture. Tea making is a traditional process in Japan and one that's revered all around the country. But Fujimori's main concern was not necessarily the art of tea making, but pushing the limits and constraints of a traditional tea house. 2 chestnut trees were felled on a nearby mountain and brought to the site, where they were used as the supports for the structure. Guests must climb a freestanding ladder which leans against one of the trees in order to reach this little house. In true Japanese style, once guests have climbed to the top, they must remove their shoes in order to politely go inside and enjoy their drink. Wozoco apartments. The weird design of the Wozoco apartments in the Netherlands came about accidentally. When they were first built in 1994, the commissioners requested 87 apartments per block, each with good natural lighting. Then, due to building developments, the number rose to 100 units per block. It was clear that the creation of 13 more units per block would have to occupy another floor, which would further limit the green common space and, as a result, the amount of natural light each tenant received. So, the 13 additional units were suspended from the side of the main structure, giving them a unique but ultimately quite scary look. Astra Tower. Hamburg's Astra brewery sat atop of the old Astra Tower in Germany, and it was certainly a top-heavy building. Finished in 1971, the original Astra Tower loomed over Hamburg's red light district for more than 3 decades. The modernist structure, which housed the brewery that made Astra beer, resembled the early stages of a Jenga game. But it's definitely a building that we'd rather not start pulling chunks out of, because it probably wouldn't stay upright for very long. It might not be the most aesthetically pleasing building, but it's definitely attracted attention because of its precariousness. Unfortunately, the brewery kept being bought out by larger and larger beverage companies, and production of Astra beer was eventually transferred elsewhere. And then, in 2005, the top-heavy Astra Tower was knocked down. The replacement building, also called the Astra Tower, hints at the original building with an all-glass facade on the 4th floor, but it doesn't have the gravity-defying feel of the original. The Hanging Temple. The Xuankangxi Temple in Shanxi Province, China, is also known as the Hanging Temple. But this temple does not so much hang as it does cling to a vast rock face at the foot of Hengshan Mountain. About 300 miles southwest of Beijing, the entire complex, a cluster of yellow-capped pagodas linked by lean planks, is kept in place with wooden cross beams that are fitted into holes chiseled into the stone. Flattened against this roughened wall, it seems that one splintered log could send the temple tumbling off of its 246-foot-high positioning. After many years of endless repairs, the Hanging Temple grew on a larger scale. It's defied the odds for a huge 1,400 years, much to many architects' astonishment. According to legend, construction began with a single monk at the end of the Northern Wei dynasty. He eventually got help from Taoist builders who were interested in the prospect of a distinct sanctuary where practitioners could meditate in true silence. They probably didn't count on it becoming a teeming tourist attraction, though. Lichtenstein Castle. Fairy tales aren't just for storybooks. There are plenty of them that exist in the real world, too. And the Lichtenstein Castle, located in southern Germany, definitely seems like it shouldn't be surviving the real world. First built in the 12th century, the palace sits on a cliff in the Swabian Alps and overlooks picturesque rolling hills below. It's another structure that seemingly shouldn't exist due to gravity, but it somehow still does. And if the Lichtenstein Castle looks like 2 separate entities, it's because of its 2 distinct eras of construction. The structure was originally built and then reconstructed multiple times between the years 1100 and 1390. With architectural work beginning so long ago, you'd be forgiven for not wanting to climb inside this fairy tale, because it really doesn't seem stable at all. Puerta de Europa. The Puerta de Europa in Madrid is a set of 2 precariously sloping gateways. They're also the world's first leaning high-rise office buildings. The 2 twin offices are 377 feet tall and have an inclination of nearly 15 degrees. We imagine you'd feel more than a little seasick standing on the top floors on a particularly windy day. These 2 buildings have been officially named the Door to Europe, as they can easily be noticed for their location. Although the 2 buildings are twins, each floor varies because of the slant. Space limitations mean that each area is designed slightly differently, adding a unique touch to what would otherwise be a fairly boring block of office rooms. Floating farmhouse. This ghostly-looking structure was thought to exist in abandoned Russia after the Soviet collapse. But while the former USSR boasts some of the world's weirdest and most hauntingly beautiful abandoned structures, it turned out that this creepy farmhouse actually lives in Ukraine. Unsurprisingly, many people thought it was fake or had been photoshopped because it appears to defy gravity. By the look of this farmhouse, even the slightest gust of wind could send it blowing down, but experts finally confirmed that the building is real and used to be part of a potato sorting facility in the country. The facility is no longer in use, if you couldn't tell from the weird, abandoned nature of the place. So it's thought that maybe some of the building had been dismantled since it was last in use. That would definitely explain how people could still walk around inside of it without it toppling over. That's all for 10 structures that defy the laws of gravity. Would you like to take a walk in one of them? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.